Avengers Endgame is pretty much the final chapter in an 11-year saga spanning 22 films. Damn, that's a lot of catching up to do. I, like almost everybody, was really excited for Endgame, especially considering how well Infinity War turned out, and even more especially considering how that movie ended. The way Infinity War ended just left so many unanswered questions in the MCU that I don't think anyone really knew how they were going to fix the mess that Thanos had made. Because if you've seen Infinity War, spoiler alert for that, because I do know some people still haven't seen that film, Thanos basically succeeds and wipes out half of all life in existence in the universe. So yeah, it's a pretty bold way to start your next film. And that's probably the first praise I can give Endgame. The way it deals with that side of things, how the characters are dealing with the aftermath of Infinity War, is genuinely interesting and leads to a lot of small, subtle character moments that are genuinely emotional and are really well executed. Not just from an acting point, but from a filmmaking point as well. The way certain characters find out certain things and the way certain things play out is just really well done here. You can tell I'm trying to be as vague as possible because this is my spoiler-free review. So yeah, I'm trying to keep it as vague as I can. I thought the acting was great from pretty much everybody. Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. give the best performances I think they've ever given in the entire MCU, and that's saying something, especially considering they are probably the best things in their respected movies, and whenever they are in an MCU film, they're always great. But here, they really go to places that their characters kind of have never been before. Robert Downey Jr. probably gives the best performance he's ever given as Tony Stark, because he really manages to bring a much more broken and fragile and emotional side to his character that really makes him a lot more vulnerable than he's ever been. And Chris Evans really shines as Captain America. In my opinion, I think he's the most likable here than he's ever been. Yeah, he was good in Winter Soldier, Civil War, and Infinity War, but here, there's just a certain thing that he gives his character. I can't really put my finger on it, but just the way he does certain mannerisms in this movie really shows that he's just trying to get this thing done to make everything right again, because I think if it doesn't go well, it could just lead to even worse things for that character. Also, special props go to Scarlett Johansson, Paul Rudd, and Jeremy Renner, who also give fantastic performances. Black Widow and Hawkeye have always kind of been pushed to the sideline, especially in the Avengers films, but here they do get a lot of time to shine, and in my opinion, they get some of the most powerful and emotional moments in the movie. They really do work as characters, both together and with the others as well, but they really do shine in this film. And Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, in my opinion, gets some of the most, I suppose, cathartic moments in the entire film as well. Because I do feel like Ant-Man gets a bit of a bad rap, especially considering the films that he's been in. I thought the first Ant-Man was really good, and a lot of people seem to think Ant-Man and the Wasp was crap, but I thought it was perfectly fine for what it was. But no, he really gets some of the best material he's ever been given in this movie, and I really like that he had a lot to do in this film. However, the best moments in the film come from the third and final act, which deliver a finale that is pretty much unlike anything I've ever seen in a film, ever. It's mind-blowingly over the top, it's satisfying as hell, and it's just batshit insane. the amount of stuff they are able to do in this final act, while still having it feel very well balanced in regards to what you're seeing, is genuinely perfect, in my opinion. The entire third act is comic book perfection, and I don't think the Russo brothers could have done it any other way. I don't know what else I can say about that, really. The final act, or like the second half of the movie, is pretty much flawless, in my opinion. However, with all that being said, this doesn't mean Endgame is a perfect movie, and for as enjoyable and as fun and as cathartic as it may be, I do think it still has a few problems. First of all, I thought the first act of the film was a little bit choppy, and the way it decides to wrap up things from Infinity War, I won't get into specifics, but the way it decides to go about doing certain things can feel a bit abrupt and jarring, especially if you're not caught up with every little minor detail, especially some previous post-credit scenes from other films. Everything can seem like it's going at a rocket pace, and you're just there like, okay, so thingy's thing, and then what are they doing there, and okay, just give me a second. But unfortunately, the film doesn't give you a second, so you just kind of have to take everything for granted for the film to work. Those things, though, the little conveniences that happen, the questions that arise in the movie after you've seen it that you unfortunately can't stop thinking about until long after it's finished, those kind of things I feel can kind of be overlooked, especially when you're watching the film, because these little conveniences, these little things that you have to take for granted there and then, or otherwise the rest of the film won't work, I feel like they work in the case of the movie. Because if you don't take them on board, and if you just count them off as bullshit, then the rest of the movie will not work for you. And unfortunately, a lot of these conveniences and issues, so to say, appear in like the first act, the first half an hour of the film. So if you're really not on board with them, then you're kind of fucked for the rest of the movie. That being said, if you're in the moment, watching the film, enjoying yourself, and just let them happen for the sake of the plot to carry on, then I think you will get the most enjoyment out of this film that you can possibly get. Which is why I definitely need to see this movie a good couple more times, because the first time I watched it, which was yesterday, when those things happened, I did question them as soon as they happened, which kind of made my enjoyment of that first half a bit wonky. I was a bit like, okay, so if that's carrying on, then what about the thing that happened earlier? But then the second half happened, and then it manages to smoothen itself out and get much of a better flow going, and just genuinely feels a lot more concise and tight and to the point. Whereas that first half still feels a bit choppy and has a lot of nitpicky issues in it that you could really scrutinize the hell out of, which is why I want to watch it again. Because I feel like going into it the second time, I know those things are going to appear, so I can then go, okay, I know that's going to happen, and I'll just enjoy it for what it is. When you really think about what this movie is trying to do, which is to be a loving send-off to this ginormous chapter in the MCU, whilst also being a love letter to the fans that have followed it since day one, I think this movie pretty much nails it on the head in that respect. I don't think it could have done it in any better of a way. That being said, I do think this movie requires a lot more than one viewing, especially when you're trying to take everything in all in one go. I've only seen this movie once so far, and I mean, even now I'm finding this review very hard to do because I'm trying to process everything that I saw whilst still trying to explain what I did and didn't like about the movie. Overall, I think this movie is great, and I think it's as good of a send-off that the Russo brothers could have pulled off. And yeah, I do think this requires more than a couple of viewings to really process everything. Because I feel like with the initial first viewing, you're just there kind of absorbing what's going on. It's like, good lord, this is a lot to take in. So yeah, I'm going to give Avengers Infinity War a 9.5 out of 10. In the near future, it might go to a 10, but I'm not quite sure yet. But yeah, I did enjoy the hell out of this movie. I still think the first act is a bit choppy in its execution, but a lot of those nitpicky, scrutinizing issues that arise with conveniences that the movie kind of has, I feel like those are things you're just gonna kind of have to put to the back of your head whilst the film happens. Yeah, you can scrutinize the shit out of it after you've seen the film, but as you're watching it, you kind of need to just let them happen for the sake of the movie to work. So guys, that was my review for Avengers Endgame. I'd love to hear what you thought in the comments below, especially whether you preferred Infinity War or Endgame. I think as an overall movie, as a singular experience, Infinity War is slightly better, mainly because it flows a lot more naturally and smoothly from start to finish, whereas Endgame for me was a bit choppy at first, but then finds its footing about halfway through. But yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments. I'd love to hear what you thought about it. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Bye!